I'm going to call to you and Secretary if you've got that update.
Yeah, before we do, I just have one quick follow-up question on the vaping questions, then I'll be clean for that update. Just confirming the illicit tobacco and vaping commissioner, is that appointment still on an interim basis?
We have the acting commissioner here, so Ms Dale can answer that question herself.
Senator Erin Dale, interim illicit tobacco and e-cigarette commissioner. That's right. It's an interim appointment. Okay.
Do you have any? You're probably not the best person to ask to follow up this question, but do you have any visibility on whether that'll become a permanent appointment anytime soon?
I'll defer that to the secretary.
We wish the best for you, Ms Foster.
Are you available?
Senator, I think it would be highly inappropriate of me to comment in this forum.
Yeah, fair enough. I thought I would try. Okay. Let's move back. You said you had an update on the annual report matters.
We do indeed.
Thank you.
So Mr Burles has an explanation of why the change was made and what we're now doing.
Great.
Senator Pete Burles, Assistant Secretary, Performance Governance Inquiries. So as I indicated, each financial year the department undertakes a consideration of its performance framework to see where it can improve its performance framework. As part of the 22-23 corporate plan process, the department and the ABF undertook a range of activities, including consultation across the department and the ABF, to look at aspects of our performance reporting framework, which is included in our corporate plan, to remove what could be defined as widget or inputs, as opposed to reporting on outcomes. As part of that consultation process, we subsequently removed the target from the 23-24 corporate plan. But however, as I indicated earlier, to ensure that there was no gap in that transparent information provided to the public, we included as supporting performance information within our annual report at page 66. As I indicated, we do that process on an annual basis, and as part of that process this year, Senator, you'll see that there's in our corporate plan 2024-25 targets 74, 75 and 76 all go to our performance reporting from an aerial surveillance activities, and we've even gone one step further this year and looked at the effectiveness in the department in applying abatements should they be required to relevant contracted service providers. So I think what I would indicate is there isn't a gap in the performance reporting. We've obviously included that data with respect to aerial surveillance hours and the like, and we've obviously reinstated those targets and more complementary targets for 24-25.
But now in the corporate plan instead of the annual report?
They're parallel documents, Senator, so we have to acquit our performance targets in our corporate plan in the subsequent annual report, yep, which we'll do in October next year.
Right. So are you saying then in the next annual report you will be reporting on your delivery against the aerial surveillance and maritime patrol day targets?
Correct, Senator. So page 125, 126 of our current corporate plan, 24-25, includes 3 performance targets related to that.
So why then couldn't it not be included in this annual report? Why is it effectively hopping out just for 1 year and then coming back again?
Because we had removed it as a target when we were trying to reorient the targets to be more focused on the outcomes we were achieving than the inputs, and that's obviously been reviewed now. And so we only report in our annual report on the targets that we had in our corporate plan.
Right, so it was removed from the corporate plan. That was the genesis of why it's not in the annual report.
Correct, Senator.
And the decision to remove from the corporate plan was that you thought it was measuring a useless widget instead of an outcome?
I wouldn't categorise it like that, Senator. As I indicate, we try to report on outcomes of the department's activities. When we went through that consideration process, it was deemed as an input rather than an outcome. As I indicated, subsequently we've reviewed our corporate plan performance framework and reinstated targets on aerial surveillance and the like, including additional complementary targets on our effectiveness in implying those abatements, etc.
So you were wrong to take it out. It should have been in there all along, really. You're effectively conceding this is something that should be measured and should be accounted for in the annual report.
Senator, I think what I'm indicating is that the department, as required under the resource management guidelines issued by the Department of Finance, undertakes an annual assessment of its performance framework. We removed that from a target in 23-24 and included it within our 23-24 annual report on page 66.
So, Senator, I think I recall the conversation where we were talking about the input-outcome conversation. It was a very genuine effort to hold ourselves to account rather than measure inputs.
I've got to say it doesn't look like that, Ms Foster, because as we know, the numbers are not good. We had them read out before. They're going down. They were previously reported in the annual report. They're not in this annual report. Now we hear they're going to be in the next annual report. It's not a good look from the department. This is the key accountability mechanism for your performance to the parliament and the public. And if anyone in the public picks up this annual report and goes, I wonder how they're going on aerial surveillance and maritime patrol days, they won't see what they saw in the previous financial year, which is it was not met. And it's not because you've started meeting the target, it's because you've removed it as a measurement in this financial year. And
Senator, all I can say to you is the conversation was genuinely about how can we best hold ourselves to account. And the fact that we included it in the supporting information, I think, indicates that we weren't trying to hide the information. We were happy to have it there. We've been working really closely with the AIO on the requirements for corporate plans and annual reports. They've been changing the parameters, and it's actually been quite a difficult process to get this right, and I think it's going to continue to evolve over the next couple of years.
Okay, all right. Well, I welcome the fact that it will be in next year's annual report. Why don't we, rather than talking about reporting on it, talk about the substance of it, which is the numbers continue to go backwards, and although there's been a decline again in maritime patrol days, it's particularly evident in the aerial surveillance hours, which have kind of precipitously declined and continue to precipitously decline. What is the department's plan to turn this around?
So before I defer to Deputy Commissioner Spencer, can I just highlight that the decline is not continuing? So for the 1st of July to the 30th of September, our patrol days have increased to 484. And in terms of aerial surveillance for that same period, the 1st of July to the 30th of September, we are sitting at 3,635 hours. So in terms of trends, they're both trending upwards compared to the last financial year.
That is very welcome news. I think that's the first time in a long time you've been able to say that, and it was not reflected in those numbers that I just asked for before, but I appreciate they're for previous financial years.
The first 3 months weren't included.
We're now into a new financial year. So do you think those trends will persist for the rest of financial year and those numbers will be on the increase for the rest of the financial year?
I'd suggest that's certainly our objective. I think particularly when it comes to patrol days, there are instances, and we had a 4.3% decline, as you suggested, from 23 to 24 from 22-23. That was generally the result of, I guess, what I'd describe as unscheduled maintenance for some of our vessels. And to give you an idea, the Cape St George had to undertake its renewal survey and deep level maintenance. That took longer than expected. So there are some instances where efforts are beyond our control, I guess, but I'd defer to Deputy Commissioner Spencer, who can add further detail.
Thank you, Senator. As Mr Fitzgerald has said, for the first quarter of this financial year, there have been improvements. I believe there's a number of things driving that. Firstly, it's crew availability. One of our suppliers, for example, for aerial surveillance, has had a new enterprise agreement settled, and that has affected crew attraction and retention. Further, we are driving harder contract management so that we are actually holding our contractors to account. Part of cleaning up our own systems, if you like, is actually having a good handle on our performance data, and instead of taking a long time to resolve performance issues with providers, resolving those quickly, which is why we've introduced that additional performance target in our corporate plan to hold ourselves to account. The other issue is obviously the age of the fleet, both for aerial but also for our maritime fleet. As those vessels and aircraft age, as you'd be well aware, maintenance increases. We have to factor that into our planning, and we also have to factor it in terms of the way we're holding the contractors to account. Obviously, all of this requires a layered effect as well, and obviously we're able to tap into other capabilities as required. However, for what we have contracted, we are focused on making sure those contractors are delivering.
Good, that's very welcome. So what's your level of confidence about sustaining this throughout the financial year and being able to report at the end of financial year an increase in both of those numbers?
So, Senator, There are a number of factors that drive what happens in terms of vessel and aircraft availability. It's not only crew, it's also in terms of the planning that's actually required for operations. Planning can happen on a month-to-month basis as well as a day-to-day basis. That can be affected by a range of things. It can be weather, it can be aircraft downtime, all those kinds of things. It all comes into play. What we have through our performance reporting now is the correct mechanisms to actually assess all of that comprehensively, which is why in our next annual report you will see much more comprehensive reporting around how we're actually delivering against the outcomes, as opposed to, as Mr Beale has said, reporting on widgets.
Sure. And so do you think that it's conceivable that we'll get back to the kind of levels of surveillance that we had 2 or 3 years ago?
Senator, if I give you, for example, August and September 2024, for the first time for one of those providers since November 2022, we didn't have to charge abatements for the first time. So definitely on the upward trajectory. And a number of those contracts, as you'd know, also are transitioning out. A number of them finished by 2027, and so we're in transition out arrangements for a number of providers, as well as having a number of procurements in place.
Yes, I was going to ask about that. You mentioned improved supplier performance. A cynical person might observe that while you're out in a tender looking for the next round of contracts, that they'd be motivated to provide better performance than they have in recent years. Is that a factor in the increased performance, do you think?
That would be speculative, Senator. I couldn't answer that.
Okay. Well, I hope they're suitably motivated while they're competing in a process to extend their contracts or win new contracts. Chair, I think that'll do for now.
Senator Should 5.
Thank you, Chair. I want to go back to my letter and the OSB request I had there, or the request for OSB numbers, please. Starting with question 27, the total number of illegal ventures and unlawful maritime arrivals that had attempted the journey to Australia since May 2022.
Senator Patterson, Rear Admiral Brett Sonner, the Commander of Operation Sovereign Borders and the Commander of Maritime Border Command. From the 1st of May 2022 to the 30th September 2024, 22 maritime people smuggling ventures targeting Australia have been successfully resolved by Operation Sovereign Borders.
Thank you. How many of them made it to the Australian mainland or an Australian territory?
So, Senator, we've had 4 ventures over that same time period have made it to the Australian mainland.
That's the mainland. What about to external territories?
A further 3 ventures have reached Australian territories, Senator.
Okay, so a total of 7 out of 22. How many were turned back?
5 ventures were turned back to the country of departure, Senator.
Thank you. How many, is it the same number for the number of passengers returned to the country of departure?
When you talk passengers, you're talking about potential irregular immigrants. So turned back over those 5 ventures was 117.
117. And they were all returned to their country of departure, presumably?
Correct.
Any others that were able to be returned to their country of departure by any other mean?
We had returned to the country of origin 9 ventures for a total of 239.
Okay. So if they're not returned to the country of departure via a turn back, what's the other means available for those?
So we're not turning back, we're doing a take back, which I've just given you, the return to the country of origin. That's the turn back.
Right, but explain the take back and how that differs from a turn back.
A take back is where we safely escort them out of Australian waters. A take back is where, through the agreement with another nation, we actually return them to their country of origin.
Right, which could be by plane, for example.
Correct.
Yep, understood. Thank you. And how many of those ventures had people taken to a regional processing centre?
8 ventures, Senator, for a total of 119.
Thank you. Could I have the total number of maritime surveillance flights and patrol days for 23-24 compared to previous financial years?
Nicole Spencer, Acting Deputy Commissioner, Australian Border Force. Senator, for aviation hours, for aerial surveillance, for 2023-2024 was 12,579 hours. previous years. Sorry, Senator, would you like me to go through previous years?
Yes, please.
Yep, so previous year, 2022, 2023, 12,688. 21-22, 14,784. 2020-21, 16,005. 2019-20, 15,212. And patrol days for the Blue Water Fleet in 2023-24, 2,086. 2022-23, 2,182. 2021-22, 2,337. 2020-21, 2,485. 2019-20, 2,298. 2018-19, 2,195. Would you like me to keep going, Senator?
No, thank you. That's more than sufficient. I appreciate that. The number of criminal incidents investigated in onshore immigration detention facility and the nature of those criminal activities?
Yes, Senator. Since April 2023, the ABF has referred 636 incidents to law enforcement partners for further investigations. Types of referrals have included arson, possession of drugs and weapons, sexual assault, financial fraud, property damage and theft.
Thank you. And I've seen Commissioner Outram's comments on that issue, and I welcome the government's signal to introduce legislation to deal with this. I note that it is eerily similar to a bill the previous government sought to progress, but nonetheless that's welcome. The total number of people charged with a people smuggling offence or an illegal fishing offence?
Yes, Senator, this line of effort is led by the Australian Federal Police, so they will give you specifics when they come up. But I can tell you that since last Senate estimates, there's been 4 arrests in terms of people smuggling offences.
Great. And can you say whether or not they've been charged in Australia, those 4?
I defer to AFP for that detail.
Okay, and that applies to illegal fishing as well?
Illegal fishing, the Australian Fisheries Management Authority are the lead, as you're aware. I can tell you from May 2022 to the 30th September 2024, there's been 141 foreign fishers prosecuted for offences under either the Fisheries Management Act or the Torres Strait Fisheries Act of 1984.
Okay, very good, thank you. I'm indebted to Senator Shoebridge for drawing to attention some discrepancies between the 2022-23 annual report of the Department of Home Affairs and the 2023-24 annual report, because I noticed one as well, and it relates to the reporting of some of these figures I was just asking you about, in particular the offshore patrol numbers. So in the 22-23 report, target 40 was assessed as maritime patrol days and area surveillance hours are maintained or increased, and the rating was not met, and it explained the decline in those numbers. I can't find in the latest annual report an equivalent target. It appears to me that it has been removed and possibly replaced. The only one that I can find, and someone can direct me to it if I've missed it, is target 35, which instead of measuring aerial surveillance and maritime patrol days just measures whether or not ABF effectively supports OSB to maintain 0 successful maritime people smuggling ventures, and it has been assessed as met. What is the reason for that change?
Senator, in terms of the annual report for that year, I'll have to take it on notice in terms of the detail, but I do recall that there was some particular issues in the performance information that we had previously, where there was a delay of up to 11 months in some information, and that's one of the issues that we've sought to remedy, which we have been doing, and now have clearer information regarding both patrol days and aerial surveillance performance.
And you've given them to me now, but then I can't find them in the annual report, and the assessment that Home Affairs used to do against its own target of achieving those appears to have been removed. Is that right?
So we now capture performance targets in our corporate plan that goes specifically to these issues.
Why is it not in the annual report?
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator.
Because it kind of looks like you're setting yourself an easier homework task instead of measuring something, you know, very objective and measurable, like the number of patrol days or the aerial surveillance hours. You've taken that out and instead just giving it, which you didn't give yourself a tick for, and now giving yourself a tick for saying, well, there were no successful people smuggling ventures despite our inability to deliver on those targets.
So, Senator, with regards to making it easier for ourselves. In the corporate plan, we're actually more specific now, including about our own performance management and contract management around aerial surveillance and patrol days. And I can just speak to those, Senator.
Thank you. But
Just one more minute.
Senator, I think we might be able to help you with the information
That would be great.
in the annual report.
thank you.
Senator Pete Bellis, Assistant Secretary, Performance Governance Inquiries. So, Senator, page 66 of the 23-24 annual report includes the number of patrol days and aerial surveillance flight hours.
Correct, but it's no longer measured as a target by which the department gives itself a pass or fail, is it?
So, Senator, as you can see, it's included as supporting performance information within the annual performance statement. So, as Ms Spencer outlined, the reporting requirement was changed as part of the 23-24 corporate plan and has since been reinstated in our 24-25 corporate plan, which you'll see a number of patrol hours in that corporate plan.
So why was it removed from the annual report as a target which Home Affairs assesses its own performance against?
So, Senator, as Ms Spencer articulated, we'll take that on notice in terms of the rationale for removing the target. But obviously we go through a range of performance improvement requirements that we undertake on an annual basis, and we continuously look at how we can improve our performance information, which includes making assessments on whether or not data is accurate, verifiable, and, to Ms Spencer's point, taking into account delays, etc.
Is there any question about the accuracy of the data you've just given me? Is it not accurate? Is it not able to be measured?
So, Senator, our data within our annual report goes through quite a robust quality assurance process, which includes clearance from our Chief Data Officer for publication.
So this wouldn't meet that standard?
In the current annual report?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
No. Well, then why is it no longer being assessed as a target?
So, Senator, as Ms Spencer said, we'll take that on notice in terms of the rationale for removing the target.
Okay, but you just gave me a rationale which was about whether or not the data was up to scratch, and then you've just admitted, in fact, the data is up to scratch because it's in there.
Senator, I think what I indicated was that we'd take it on notice in terms of the rationale for removing the target. The data that's contained within this annual report is accurate.
Okay. So you said that it's been
Senator
moved now.
Patterson, we're due to go to a break. Sorry,
Okay.
we need to do that.
All right, well,
And
we'll have to return to this. Thank you.